So my passion is to learn about other people's passions, because when someone has a chance to talk about what they're most passionate about, everything about their being becomes brighter, it becomes more real, it becomes more them. And I think that authenticity and that feeling alive and connected and present in the world is a thing I want to surround myself with all of the time. On today's episode, I am talking with the energetic Seth Levine. If you want to learn more about Seth, please go to janesplace.com, where you can learn more about him and his favorite comfort food. So Seth, the main purpose of the podcast at Jane's Place is to really talk about what people are passionate about. And why I love to talk about what people are passionate about is it brings out sort of the best in all of us, and really wish for sort of the next generation of leaders that they can find their passion, because they will then hopefully kind of live up to their highest potential. So as you think about what you're most passionate about, it could be one thing, it could be many things, but let's just kind of, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about what you're most passionate about?
I mean, I'd like to talk about, family, entrepreneurship, there are things that I care a lot about. The thing that came to mind, which I'm almost embarrassed to say, is wing foiling.
All right, what is wing foiling?
It is, I just picked it up, so I'm like, maybe I'm just in the throes of it's a new thing for me, and it's the first time I actually got it working, I'll explain it in a second, I actually remember the feeling when I was like, I'm going to be chasing this the rest of my life.
Wow.
It's a little bit like windsurfing,
okay,
but you're on like a surfboard thing, maybe a little smaller than something between a surfboard and a stand-up paddleboard. And below it is a mast that has a foil on it, which is looks like a wing.
Yes.
And then you're holding a big wing, depending on how strong the winds are. And so it's like windsurfing, but there's no mast. And you're not on the water. The idea is you use the wing. Sometimes you have to kind of pump it, or you kind of get going in stronger wind. And the board lifts up out of the water, and you have to balance the right way. And then you're they call it flying. You're flying above the water, sort of on the foil, right? So your board is usually, the masts vary in length, but mast is the thing that connects the board to the foil below it. But it's 70, 80, maybe 90 centimeters. So you're a couple feet out of the water.
Wow.
And you're adjusting the wing, and I think the thing I like about it is, well, one, you're flying. Right. So that, and that was it looks so easy. If you Google wing foiling, and you'll see it, and you're like, that looks simple. And then you get out on the water, and it's super hard.
How do you even get your balance? Because to me, it's how do you even get up? That's the thing I can't even imagine.
Hard. It's really hard to get up. It turns out it's really hard to do that, right? It's hard to, all of it. It was this weird experience of one, maybe I just liked it because I was so bad at it. I was trying to learn it. I took some lessons. It's not the kind of thing that you can just pick up in a lesson, right? I think it took me 5 lessons to consistently get out of the water, and someone's chasing you around in the boat, because if you can't get up on foil, you can't go upwind, so you get blown downwind.
Right.
And so you can't go back to where you started. And so my whole goal this summer was to get to a point where I was confident enough that I could just go up by myself.
And were you attached to a boat actually? Is that when you first start, or?
No, well, some people do learn by either going out on an e-foil which is just a foil, and you're carrying a trigger, and it's got a propeller on it, and so that gives you the feeling of flying on the water. And I had done that before. I don't mind that, but it's noisy, and it's not the same. And then some people do like to start being towed behind a boat. It's a very different feeling because you're getting pulled forward by the tow rope.
Right.
And so you can sort of get the feeling of what it's like to fly, but it's not quite the same because the balance is totally different. But ultimately what you have to do is you start on a paddleboard, and you just learn how to or really you start on the beach, and you learn how to hold the wing and how to catch the wind essentially, and you got to do it in both directions, right? So, and then you go out on a paddleboard, and so there's no foil on it. You're just trying to catch the wind and feel yourself moving, but you're on a paddleboard, so it's pretty stable.
Right.
And then you go to a pretty big board, but that has a foil below it, and then so you're still maybe not stable, but you're stable-ish. And then you can actually get up a little bit on foil, and then you crash all the time, like constantly, right? Because it's really hard to get the balance, right? Like the difference between being like up on foil and being totally balanced and not is like this.
Wow!
Right?
Wow!
So it's like very small movements, and your brain has no idea what it's doing. So it's just like you don't know what to do, and then it just takes you over a period of time. You like figure out how to get. But by the way, so you think about I don't know. People listening are like snowboarders or skateboarders or something like that. So you start on the direction that you're strongest at, right? Everyone has a direction that they like to go in, but you have to be able to go both ways, right?
Yeah,
so you got to be able to turn.
You can't just keep going, right?
Right. You got to be able to like switch your feet around and go in the other direction. So not only do you have to figure out how to get up, going the direction that I'm pointing this way because my left foot forward is my favorite direction. But then you have to actually learn how to go back the other way with your other foot forward. I don't know why that I started dreaming about it. I actually think that's maybe what I finally, every wing foiler tells these stories about like, they weren't getting it. And I have friends who took 30 lessons like before they could get it, right? Like it just takes a while. But then and you're just like, I'm never going to get it, not going to get it. And then one day you just go out and all of a sudden it somehow clicked. And I think it's a really interesting insight into sort of like the brain, like mind-body connection.
Right.
Because it is this very, you can think about it and I was out taking lessons, so I had a coach and he was like, okay, think about this and adjust your foot or move your position back a little bit or whatever, you'll find it easier to balance. Like there was definitely some of that, but at the end of the day, it's just like you have to kind of figure out how to get balanced when you're up out of the water, which is both a really stable position to be in once you know what you're doing, but until then, it's an incredibly unstable position.
Wow.
And then, God forbid, if the foil comes out of the water, especially the big foils, which is what you learn on, then you like hit the deck really fast. So you go from like, this is amazing to you've just fallen, 3 feet in, like splat into the water, like really fast. I mean, you wear a helmet. I wear like a not just a life jacket, but they make these special life jackets. They're like crash life jackets.
Oh, wow.
They're made to be like, thrown into the water and protect you a little bit. So
this must be amazing for your core, though. From an exercise standpoint,
yeah.
Has got to be
amazing and like maybe a little hard on the back, right? When you're an old guy like me, like I definitely would get home some of those days and just be like, oh, okay, my back's kind of hurting. But it was, so I took 5 lessons this summer, and I was able to like after the 5th lesson, I was like, I think I'm okay. I think I'm going to try it myself. And so then I got to go out a bunch of times. It was sort of towards the end of the summer that you can only go out when the wind's blowing.
Right. And do you know? And how do you because around here it's like it's either still or it's like gale force winds. I mean, how do you know what's the right wind?
Like a fool, I brought. So you have different size wings, right? So it's depending on the wind condition, you have bigger or smaller wings. I did bring some wings back, and I was going to buy a setup for here, and I'm sort of debating like you can wing foil on Boulder Res, or there's some reservoirs in Longmont that you're allowed to do it on. But you're right. The problem is like when are the winds consistent? Because gusty winds are not as fun because you're the mast, right? You're a sailboat and you're the mast. So you're standing there, and when, of course when the winds gust, you've got to sheet out, which is what we call it in sailing, right? So you push your hand out to like give yourself a little bit more cushion. But if it gets too gusty or the gust comes up too fast, you could just get pulled off the board, right?
Well, and so you must have learned this at Cape Cod then this summer.
Yeah, I learned it in Nantucket this summer.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, which is not a bad place to learn it, in part because the harbor there's a really big strip of sand, like a huge. That's not even a sandbar. It's actually like exposed all the time. So you can't just get blown out at least in many of the places that if you go in the harbor. I sometimes would go, once I got better at it, I would go out in the sound, which is fun because you can go for a mile in each direction, which is really fun, but you got to be able to get back. Right. And I did have, it's humbling, right? Like, one, I'm not great at it yet, so I'm still learning, which I love. But 2, when the winds drop out, and I had 2 instances when I was out by myself when the winds dropped out. And 1, some family was out in a powerboat and they picked me up and took me back to the beach, which I was really happy about. And then another, and I knew it was going to happen. I was just like, when you're out doing something and you're like, I just want to do one more run. Mm-hmm. And I'd been out for a couple hours. I'd had a really great time. And it was when the when you get to the end of the day and the sun starts going down, oftentimes the wind drops. Right. And I kind of was expecting that. But I was like, okay, let me do one more. And I got all the way, out as far as you can go in this little area. And then I turned around to go back, and I didn't have enough wind to get back up onto my foil. And I was like, uh-oh, what am I going to do here? And so I ended up on my knees, with the wing, trying to get back. And I got sort of close-ish to where I was trying to go, but I'm like a little downwind. And then I said to put the wing behind me, and I lay down on the board, and for like 40 minutes.
Oh, no. God, you had to be exhausted.
I was super tired, yeah. And late to dinner, yeah.
You know what I love about this is, first of all, it's fun to talk about something that you're passionate about. But more importantly, that this is new. I mean, this whole idea that, in the course of our lives, we can have so many different passions, and you can find something that is just new that you've never done before, and it's just like that. It's like hearing you talk about the excitement about it. It's like I could never do that. I just did parasailing for the first time.
You told me about that. That's awesome,
and
right?
It was like,
and you have that feeling of flying,
oh
right?
my gosh, it was like I just didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep going back up, and of course it doesn't require anything. So you're just sitting there, so it's not there's no skill involved or any exercise or anything. But that feeling of flying is just,
but it's fun. To your point, it's fun to try new things, and it's funny. I joke with my wife, like, hey, I've got you know what I needed? A new hobby, and it's inexpensive and doesn't involve gear. Because of course it's expensive and it involves a lot of gear, right?
And you really don't have time for a new hobby, I'm sure, too.
I've got tons of time, so it's exactly what I want to be doing. But part of what I like about it is, so not only is it new to me, but actually wing foiling itself is relatively new, period, right? Yeah. I mean, really people have been doing it for, I don't know, I'm sure they've been doing it for 10 years, but the advancements in the technology have happened over the last probably 5 years for the most part. And it was, I think it was a bunch of windsurfers who, or maybe kiteboarders, and there's, you can kite foil and things like that. And people are like, maybe there's something in between those two things. And so I think they started doing that. But because of that, the technology is changing really rapidly as well. So it's kind of fun, like the geeky side of me kind of likes to think about it, because you've got a lot of variables, right? You've got the wing and the size of the wing, you have the board and the size of the board, and they make a bazillion size boards. And then you have the length of the mast, you have the length of the sort of thing that connects the rear stabilizer with the foil wing. And then you've got all different shapes and sizes of the foil wing, and then you've got a smaller array of shapes and sizes of the rear stabilizer. And so all of those things can change the experience on that. And I'm just starting to get into that, right? Like right now I have a board, a mast, a wing,
right.
A couple of big wing sizes, but a foil wing and a stabilizer. And I haven't ordered it yet, but I've just like sort of specced out like sort of a little quiver of like a few things to give me a new different type of board that's like for different type of things, and a couple of different front wings for different conditions and things like that. So it's, I don't know.
Have you done it here in Colorado yet?
I have not done it in Colorado. Yeah. So I have some of the gear here, and I'm trying to decide if I want to like go all in and buy like a whole setup for here. Right. But I mean, since I've been back from the East Coast, which has only been a couple weeks, there hasn't been a single day where there's been wind to do this.
Right.
And it's also getting into the fall, and I'm like, all right, am I actually gonna be able to do this, or would it be easier and maybe even cheaper to just go like take a trip somewhere,
right,
and learn it? I mean, the hardest thing is like the winds are up and down, right? So you like when you're learning something, if you're going to go ski, like you want to go ski 3-4 days in a row,
right.
It's really hard to get those consistent days. At least where I was this summer, and certainly here. And so, maybe I should go find some place to go where it's blowing, 15 knots to 20 knots every single day. And then I could go out, for hours every day and like actually get better.
And where it's warm, when we get dumped into the water, you can...
that would be helpful, yeah. So I spent my whole summer, I get cold easily, so I spent the whole summer in like a full wetsuit doing
right.
this. I would be much happier to just be in like a long sleeve shirt of some kind for sun protection and call it good.
I love it.
I need to find a better looking helmet too. Like the helmet I have is just, so geeky. I bought it off of Amazon. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, helpful, right? Because sometimes you not just contact the water, but you like when you really wipe out, you can sometimes contact the wing or the board or something like that.
Right,
so like,
right.
definitely wouldn't go without one.
Yes.
Yeah, I need to get all that stuff done.
I imagine the next time we're going to talk, you're going to probably have like a whole garage with, almost like the Batmobile station or something, where you've got like every different size of everything.
I was talking to my wife about some of the stuff I was going to order, and without skipping a beat, she said, maybe you want to order a Sprinter van too to keep it all. I mean, she was joking, but sort of not, right?
Right.
And I actually, it's funny, I was winging with a friend of mine towards the end of the summer, and he, I guess, has a place in Bermuda. I haven't been there. And he was telling me, he's like, I basically have like a wing shop in Bermuda.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's as he's gotten better, he's upgraded his equipment and done different things. And he's just like, yeah, I've got, 6 boards and 10 foils and 15 wings and, all of the things.
All right, that's who you have to go visit. And you can like tap into his thing, and it's warm there.
And it's warm, and yeah, that would be beautiful. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, let's shift gears for a second. So this is your newest passion.
Yeah.
One of the things because I think we've known each other, gosh, I don't know, maybe 15 years or something like that. It's been a while. One of your, I think, oldest passions is entrepreneurship.
Of course.
And do you mind just talking a little bit about how you got the bug for that and how it shows up in your life today?
Well, I hadn't thought about it until I started work. So I've been a venture capitalist for 25 years. And I hadn't thought about sort of my history of entrepreneurship until a few years in, and someone sort of said, "Oh, have you always had the entrepreneurial bug?" And I realized, I really always did, right? I mean, I was not only was I the kid that was like going and shovel. I grew up in Boston, so it was snowy and whatever in the winter. I was the guy who was going around the neighborhood shoveling people's snow. But I also devised what was, I think, an early SaaS model for snow shoveling. I don't. It was probably my second or third year doing this, so I was probably like in 9th grade maybe, and I had decided that what I really wanted to do was I wanted to know what my income was going to be, and I had a few regulars when it snowed, but mostly it was like truly knocking on doors. Hey, would you like me to shovel your walkway? It's whatever, $5 back then or something like that. And so what I did is I went around in the fall to a whole bunch of people, and I basically said, hey, for, I can't remember what it was, maybe $20 a month for the next 3 months, I will shovel whether it snows 1 time or 6 times. I just want to know if I have it. And so I got a bunch of people signed up, and then I went to some friends and I was like, hey, I'll pay you, I'm sure it's like $1 an hour to come shovel with me. Right. And so I had, whatever, probably a dozen houses that I did this for, and I had a couple friends, and we'd go around every morning that it snowed and we'd shovel it out. So I had that as my sort of first entrepreneurial experience. I was also that kid, which is embarrassing to say, that I would sell, lollipops for 25 cents out of my backpack and stuff like that as well. And you'd go to the store, you'd buy the whole box of lollipops or gum or whatever, and then at school, the kids would come find you and you'd sell them for 25 cents, and I don't know what a box costs, $5, and you'd sell it for $25, piecemeal, one at a time. So I kind of always had that bug, but venture is interesting because I'm not an entrepreneur, right? I mean, I'm an entrepreneur in the sense that I started my venture business, and so we had to go through that whole process of getting it going and raising money, and and putting really my life savings up to try to do that. But as a VC, most of my time is spent advising entrepreneurs, and I don't really have any decision-making authority other than I have decision-making authority inside our firm we can decide, or the firm can decide to invest or not invest. And there's a few things that we vote on from time to time at companies, but most of my time is I always say I'm in the influence game, right? I'm here to influence. And so I think of myself less as an entrepreneur and more as a cheerleader for entrepreneurs, because I feel like my job is to help bring the best out of them. Because they're the ones who are really, doing all the real work. So I get to be, entrepreneurial adjacent and proximate. But I want to differentiate, because I think the work you do day to day at a business, I mean, you literally, but also you generally, is different than the work that I do. There's some firm building in the venture world, but it's different. You're not trying to build, for the most part, this big business that's incrementing every day and every week. from a like size and revenue perspective, like you have a fixed revenue model. You're trying to increment your business, right? Be better and better every single day. So there's that aspect to it. I kind of work for myself in the sense that I don't report to a boss. So that feels entrepreneurial. We're beholden to our limited partners, our investors. And I have partners and I report back to them, but I don't report to them. So it's a little bit of a different experience, but I'm a cheerleader for entrepreneurship, and I take that role very seriously. And I don't mean that just of the companies that we fund at Foundry. I feel like part of my job, and I think it's just because of who I am and what I care about, to your point about passion, is like I want to lift up entrepreneurs more generally. We're talking at the very end of Colorado Startup Week, and I spent the whole week down there. And part of what I loved about it was a chance to basically encourage a lot of entrepreneurs, right? To be a cheerleader for a lot of entrepreneurs. There are thousands of people that come to Denver Startup Week, and one of my favorite moments was for me was the kickoff event that they did on Tuesday. They asked a couple of us to sort of come up on stage and have these sort of conversations, kind of like this. And I was able to come and really interview a woman who has an accelerator program that's focused on underrepresented entrepreneurs, someone I've known for a long time who I think really, really highly of, Zanetta Kelsey. And that was really fun to like ask her these questions about what drives her, what her passion is, why she does what she does. And that was for me, and it was sort of a packed audience because it was the kickoff event and the mayor had just spoken and stuff like that. And it was really fun to be able to kind of pull those stories out of her and participate. And I hope inspire some people in the audience to think a little bit differently about maybe what they were doing or what they could be doing.
Well, as a cheerleader of entrepreneurs, you're meeting with a wide range of people. And so in your experience, are there certain characteristics that you've seen that you meet somebody and you're like, yeah, like, I don't know if their business venture, this might work or not, but that person has got what it takes. I mean, are there some sort of themes that you've seen over the years, Seth?
I think you'll appreciate this answer because I think it actually starts with passion, right?
Right.
And I think like great entrepreneurs have the ability to be passionate about the thing that they're working on. And I think that whether that passion comes from very specific experience, probably better if it does, or it comes from something else, right? They read about or whiteboarded something and then they went out and found people that were having whatever problem it is that they're solving. But like great entrepreneurs have a deep-seated passion to fix something, create something that doesn't exist in the world. And I love that about entrepreneurship and about spending time with entrepreneurs. And that's part of why I don't feel like my role is ever to tell someone this is a bad idea. Right? Sometimes I'll frame, hey, here's some things you might think about, or maybe here's some work you might want to do to explore this a little bit more, because I've certainly heard some ideas that I don't think are great ideas, but I don't like to say to someone who's passionate, hey, that doesn't sound like a good idea, because I feel like that doesn't lift them up, and it's not that I want to be blowing smoke up their ass, but I want them to feel like I listened to what they had to say. Even if I don't share that passion, I appreciate their passion, and so I feel like it's important. That's an important role, and I don't like kind of squashing people's dreams like that.
But you know what's so interesting you say that, because I'm with you 100%. I love the passion part of it, and I meet a lot of entrepreneurs in the food space, and generally the thing that motivates is somebody's gluten-free or they're vegan or they have some health reason that they've wanted to get into that. And what I've seen so many times is they're so passionate, but they don't have the rest of the kit to make it work, or to totally understand how expensive it is to get in the food business, how hard it is, and all of that. And so it's interesting you say that about trying not to kind of squash their dreams, because you also don't want someone to put all their life savings into something where you're like, you know, that brand like already exists someplace else. You just don't know because you live in Colorado. But if you go to Boston, you're going to see that gluten-free bread business is there right now. So it's kind of a fine line, right?
I think so. But I think you can say, hey, here's some things you might look at, or have you heard of this company? You know, I'd maybe look at that really carefully before you decide to do, you know, X or Y. Like, I think all of that is totally fair game, and I think it's appropriate, right, to provide that kind of feedback. What I'm really talking about is like, I don't think, because I've heard people do this where people are like, well, that's a dumb idea.
Right. And
I'm like, that's the worst thing you should say to anyone, right? Like, you want to, it's funny, my son is taking an entrepreneurship class, and he came up with this idea that's like totally been done like 2 or 3 times before.
Right.
And so, but I was like, I'm so excited that he was excited about his entrepreneurship class that I was like, and I don't think he is copying something. I think he just came up with this idea.
Yes.
It just happens to be something that someone else, it was a good enough idea that someone's thought about it already.
Right.
And so I was like, that's amazing, Emmanuel. I think that's awesome. And have you, my wife had a separate conversation, but I think it was pretty similar with him. Like, here's some things you might look at to think about what you want to do. How is it different than what these companies have done, right? So I think there's a way of describing it that feels like you're being supportive of their passion, but also sort of pointing them to some potential roadblocks. And in the best case scenarios, I've certainly had this happen. People see that and they change a little bit, or they have an insight, and that actually ends up being really impactful and helpful. So instead of starting them on the wrong path, you actually help them start, maybe on a little bit of a better path. And of course, I always tell people all the time, like, I'm professionally wrong, right? I mean, VCs are maybe right, like really right 1 out of 10 times, and sort of right like maybe 3 out of 10 times. So that means I'm wrong most of the time. And so, I oftentimes especially when I've spent some time with an entrepreneur, and I part of my turn down email when I say, hey, we're not going to pursue this. One is I always try to provide a bunch of detail and a little bit of feedback, but I almost always end with, I'm usually wrong, right? Like, I just please keep in mind that, I'm wrong all the time, and I applaud you for, pursuing your dreams, right? Or your passion.
Wow.
And I think that's important.
I love that. I'm not an entrepreneur. I consider myself an operator, but you have been super helpful to me over the last 6 months as I've been trying to operate more as an entrepreneur in my company and think strategically about a few things. And I want to say thank you so much for that. It's been amazing, actually. But it kind of
You're selling yourself short if you don't put yourself in the entrepreneur category. I think you're incredibly entrepreneurial, especially over the last couple of years.
Well, maybe risk-taking, I guess, if that goes into entrepreneurial. So my last question for you that I think our listeners would like to know is, because so many people must come to you for money.
Yeah.
And all the time, because every entrepreneur that I know is always looking for money, including me as a non-entrepreneur. What advice would you give about before you start to talk to someone seriously about trying to get money? What are the couple things that you're looking for? Even if you're wrong 7 out of 10 times, you must be looking for a couple of key things when somebody comes to you, like that. And maybe just a couple simple things that would be helpful to frame the thoughts of someone who's listening, who's an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot for 2 other reasons. One is I've been on the other side of the table. I started a fintech business, as you know, because you supported it.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting process to go out and raise money on my own. Meaning for my own business. Right. I shouldn't say on my own. I have a co-founder and partner, and she's actually the CEO. So that was interesting. So that's informed a little bit. Now I've been on kind of both sides of that table. And the other thing that your question actually makes me think about, which is not where you were exactly headed with it, is just, we're not going to raise another fund at Foundry. We're going to wind down. And it has occurred to me, I feel like people seek my advice because I have a pile of cash behind me. And I wonder how quickly that's going to go away. Someone asked me the other day, why are you, seems like you're out, sort of out talking a bunch. I've recorded a few podcasts. Right. I've got a book thing coming out. All sorts of things I'm trying to do that are public. And I said, one of the things that I'm worried about is that I won't sort of have a platform or a voice in a few years because I have made the decision to get out of sort of the institutional, at least, investment game.
Right.
And so I'll be interested to see what happens there. But to answer your actual question, it sort of comes back a little bit to passion. I'm looking for entrepreneurs that are righting a wrong in their mind, right? They're really passionate about what they're going after. They're going after that market that I think can be really big. It doesn't have to be big now. But that I think is really big. They're building something that feels like a company, and not a feature or a product, right? I think that's, especially at the earlier stages, it's sometimes hard to differentiate between something that is a really interesting product idea, and in some cases even just an interesting feature idea, like a little add-on to something, right, versus something that could ultimately evolve to be product. And maybe these are reasons why we do get it wrong most of the time. It's really hard to build something that's actually company scale.
Yeah.
And so those are the things I think about. I particularly like markets, I don't want to say that don't exist yet, but that aren't quite, I generally don't invest in the sort of large TAM markets. Hey, if we only get 1% of this market, we'll be a massive business kind of thing. And I'm much more interested in this market sort of exists, but it's adjacent to this other thing. And when we unlock it in a certain way, it's actually going to be huge, right? You could call it a shadow market. And I think that those sometimes are the most interesting markets. And for us, I think about Fitbit and Whoop in the fitness tracking space. There wasn't a market for pedometers, right? A big one, at least, when we invested in Fitbit, right? That was like, hey, it actually is something here if we can make it in this way. Whoop in the same way, which is this sort of quantified self stuff as well, which is kind of similar to Fitbit, but in a sort of a different, 10 years later, 15 years later, different iteration. Or even something as simple as Rover, right, which is the dog sitting, dog walking platform, right? If the comp for that had been, well, how big is the kennel business? Well, that wasn't really the business we were going after, right? We were going after the like, hey, Jane, I'm going to be gone for this weekend. Would you just stop by and, let the dogs out once or twice a day and help me out? Like, that was the market we were going after. It turned out that was a massive market, right? So those are just a couple examples where, like, that I find really, for me at least, really intriguing. And those tend to be some of the biggest outcomes because you're kind of making a new market. And there's examples of that are outside of consumer, right, that are more enterprise software and things like that as well. So, those are things I care about a lot when I'm talking to an entrepreneur and trying to decide, hey, does this make sense? Is this, do I want to take in the first meeting, the question isn't, do I want to invest? It's, do I want to take another meeting?
Right, exactly.
Do I want to see the product? Do I want to talk to some potential customers? Do I want to exercise my own network and see what people's reaction is to that? So it's, it usually takes a few meetings before we start getting to the point of like, this is actually something I could see us investing in.
Wow. Well, I can tell you for sure that even without piles of cash behind you, people are going to still be coming to talk to you to get your advice, because so much, I think, of what entrepreneurs need is like personal advisory boards. I mean, people that can give them good advice, and not just your spouse or your best friend or someone who just wants to agree with you and wants you to be happy, but instead somebody who can sort of take that, whether it's a good idea or not a good idea, but have you like feel like you own something, you can be excited about it, but maybe you could make it a little bit better. So I think that packet of stuff that you've got that might not have any cash with it.
I hope you're right, because I love doing this, and I'll keep doing some investing with my own capital, but that's a lot less than the big fund I have behind me now. So I hope you're right.
That's great. Well, Seth, thank you so much. Between what's it called? The
wing foiling.
Wind foiling.
Wing.
Yes. Wing foiling. Wing foiling. Okay. You will not probably see me on the Boulder Res.
I'm happy to take you out there if you'd like to go.
That's great. Thank you for your time today.
I love it.
Really
Thanks for having
appreciate
me.
it.
This is really fun.
Seth and I met many years ago as we were both board members of the Unreasonable Institute. His firm, the Foundry Group, also published my book, Sleep Your Way to the Top and Other Myths About Business Success, back in 2014. We have both had a passion for entrepreneurship our whole careers, although I like his term of being a cheerleader for entrepreneurs. I believe that also describes my passion for innovators. We have had many discussions over the years about business, with him most recently advising me about Rudy's. Although I don't see myself ever wing foiling, his enthusiasm for his newest passion was contagious. From our discussion, I have 2 questions for you and me. First, do we take a chance and try something totally new without any expectation that it will become our newest passion? And second, when someone shares their passion and we think it's a bad idea, do we encourage them, dissuade them, or try to steer them in a new direction? Special thanks to Jane's Place fabulous producer, Aditi Joshi, who made my passion a reality. I am also so appreciative that the amazing musician, Tim Cook, provided the lively music from the Subdudes called Them Figs. This podcast was brought to you by Rudy's Bakery new gluten-free Sandos with Justin's Nut Butter, and from our friends at Naturally Colorado. I want to keep asking questions that matter, and I want this to feel like a space where your story belongs too. If there's something you want to talk about, a moment, a memory, a shift you're going through, Jane's Place door is always open. Truly. You can drop me a note on the website, join a future episode, or simply listen in when you're ready. Because Jane's Place isn't just a podcast, it's a gathering, and I'm so grateful that you're here.